Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett along with Kent Myers. We're here every week, as you know, meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and we bring in a guy you've known for a long time.
Well, just 60 years, or actually 63
and
years.
And he still is willing to be seen with you again, and that's something. So I don't know if it speaks about him or you, but
he's got to be more discerning than he is, I think. But yeah, we're really pleased today to welcome to the set of The Verdict nationally, internationally known star Mason Williams, who came right out of Oklahoma City, Northwest Classen, class of '56, along with other notables like Cy Hughes and others I won't try to name right now. But Mason's going to be in town doing some things, and I got a hold of him, asked him to come on the show. He was gracious enough to give us his time out of a busy schedule. We got to meet his wife before we started. She's delightful. So I think you're going to really enjoy this show. You're going to hear a lot of interesting, familiar things in the course of hearing from Oklahoma's troubadour, Mason Williams.
We'll be right back. You're watching The Verdict. Classical Gas is the name of that song, and its artist Mason Williams is the guest on our today's show. Kent, this is just a really special guest that we're having today, and great opportunity. I know you're going to give him more an official introduction at this point.
Well, I am. It's just such a personal pleasure because this was one of the guys I did remember from high school without him having to be successful. I would have remembered him fondly in any event, because what I remember about Mason Williams is he was a genuinely nice guy. He was approachable, friendly, pleasant, and sometimes in high school that isn't easy. In any event, today Mason is joining us as part of some other activities he's engaged in here in Oklahoma. He's now living in Eugene, Oregon. A little bit about Mason that you may not know. He is, of course, an award-winning musician, comedy writer, and I would call him an award-winning friend. He was a classmate at Northwest Classen, the first class in 1956. He is a 3-time Grammy Award winner, an Emmy Award winner as well. He's written on such shows as Roger Miller's Show, Dinah Shore Show, Saturday Night Live, and of course, probably most famously on the Smothers Brothers shows that had a couple of different titles. He is coming to Oklahoma City as to be recognized for his membership in the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame. Of course, this is his first visit, but I really hope it's not his last visit to The Verdict. Mason, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
I'm kind of starstruck, I'll tell you.
Well, I'm starstruck too. You still look great, man. You were such a handsome guy back in...
Really?
Yeah, he was great.
What a shock that is.
Oh, no, he still looks great. Okay. All right. Okay.
All right. Mason, first of all, thank you for coming on the show. I know your schedule's busy. You are best known for the song Classical Gas. So
yes.
Why don't we just start with that? When you went out to California, did you have any idea that you were going to be, performing and working on such
No, believe it or not,
pieces?
when Ed Ruscha and I drove out to California in 1956.
How old were you then?
I guess I was 16, and
it's like running away from home.
Yeah, I was, and I just decided to go with Ed, and I was going to be an insurance actuary. I worked for the Occidental Life Insurance Company out there, and was going to take those actuary tests. Boy, they were something, I'll tell you. I looked at the vocabulary test alone, and I went, man, I don't know but about a half of these words, and so I knew I'm going to have to really work hard on that. But while I was there, a jazz pianist came to live in the boarding house we lived in, and he played the piano, and he looked like he was having so much fun that I said, okay, I'm going to swing over to music. And
well, you'd always been involved in music up to that time, I guess.
I hadn't studied music, but I sang, and you know, back in 1956 in junior high school and high school, we listened to the radio constantly, and I sang along with everybody who relative who was, and I still love to sing the Platters songs, like, oh yes, I'm the great pretender, pretending that I'm doing well. So anyway, great to.
Very nice.
And I didn't know you weren't supposed to sing up there because my real voice is down here, you know. But so because of listening to the radio, then I developed a pretty good falsetto voice, and it's my favorite to sing that way now.
Well, so how did you get into the studio to start recording music?
Oh, let's see. Well, I was a songwriter. I wrote my first songs here in Oklahoma City in 1960, and then I kept plugging on that. And I was in the Navy for a couple of years, and that was 62 and 63. And then in 1964, I went to LA and became a songwriter and hooked up with a publisher, and he gave me $200 a month, which was a lot of money in 1964, if I delivered 2 songs a month. And so I started writing songs, and then I hooked up with the Smothers Brothers in 65.
How'd that come about?
Their sister was a waitress. Tommy's sister, Sherry, was a waitress at the Troubadour, a club in Los Angeles. And Tommy would say, any weird guys coming through there that might do comedy material? And she said, well, there's this one guy, Mason Williams, who has these funny poems and goofball songs and plays guitar pretty well. And so Tommy invited me up to his house, and I played him a bunch of demos, and a week later I'm recorded on an album with him, and that was the beginning of our relationship. And I was on the road with him for quite a while, and traveling around the country playing concerts. And when they got their show on CBS in 1966, Tommy hired me as a writer, because I knew when I lived here in Oklahoma, I had learned 200 or 300 folk songs, and a lot of their material was based on what we called opening up folk songs, to make, you know, they would sing a part of it and then go off on some tangent. So I was the perfect guy to write for them because of the music experience that I had. And I became a head writer for the show eventually, and that was really interesting. And
that was a top-rated show.
Yeah, it actually, we were on at 9 o'clock on Sunday night, and when CBS gave us that time slot, it was called the kamikaze time slot, because 9 previous shows had fallen on their swords trying to beat Bonanza, and we were the only show that ever beat Bonanza. So, but it took us some doing to do that.
Wow.
And you know, it took, I don't know if that, I guess it happened in the first year, but the Smothers Brothers show embraced the counterculture, the revolution, so to speak. And so what they used to say is TV used to be about to pass, and the Smothers Brothers made it now. So that was pretty good.
Talk about Classical Gas.
Classical Gas, I wrote it in 1967, and actually I was writing for Roger Miller, and I used to go to these parties, and they would get sitting around in a big circle, and they'd pass the guitar around, and people would play songs and things, and I didn't have anything to play, so I said, I'm going to have a song to play at these parties. And so I started working on Classical Gas, and that was the original thing for it. And I actually wrote it when I was writing comedy on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. And because when you're writing comedy, you write a piece and then you got to step back from it, and it's kind of like being a painter. You know, you want to stand back from the painting and then have at it again. And so I'd pick up the guitar and work on Classical Gas in between writing for Jack Benny or whoever it was, did all those great stars they had on the show. And we had a lot of rock groups, the Beatles, the Who, the Doors, you know, Simon and Garfunkel and Sonny and Cher, Donovan, I mean, Ray Charles. I got to meet all of those people. And the great thing is that you interviewed them, and you know, to get some idea of how to introduce them or what they wanted to do. And I remember writing comedy for Ray Charles. He said, you know, they never let me be in the comedy bits. And I said, okay, next time you come to the show, you're going to be not just a great piano song singer and he played sax too. So I involved him in a comedy piece, and he was so thrilled to be in a comedy piece.
And you talked a lot about your writing, and there's not a lot of lyrics in Classical Gas.
No, yeah, that was. I have to say that this is a great quote from a painter. Colin Morris was his name, but he said, "Music is the envy of all the arts because nobody asks what music means." In other words, if it's a song, it means something, or if it's a poem, it means something. Painting, what do they mean by that? A play, whatever. But it's the one place where the general public will accept an abstraction. They take it for what it is, not what it means, and that's a great thing to realize, that you don't have to be so fond of meaning all the time.
We're going to take a break. We'll have more with Mason Williams, and as we go to break, you're going to be listening to Classical Gas.
All right.
Welcome back to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and our guest, Mason Williams.
Mason, you've written poems, you've written books, you've written music. Putting aside Classical Gas, because it's the one that everybody knows about and everybody's heard.
Right.
What's your favorite other thing that you've written?
Well, you go in and out of different. You sort of burn out on doing poetry, and then you move to music, and then you move to books, and then you can move to TV and move to art. And one of the songs that I really like best is the one I wrote for Ed Ruscha called Eddie, I'm Ready. And remember back in high school, you would listen to the radio with your girlfriend in the car, and you were, if a song was a little bit suggestive, that's what you wanted to.
That helped.
Your date to help, right? So that song goes, Eddie, Eddie, oh my love, you're the one I'm dreaming of. In the heart of every girl, there's a woman of the world. Eddie, Eddie, oh my love, heaven sent you from above. Eddie, I'm ready. Eddie, I'm ready for love. And that's just the kind of thing that he would have liked to have heard on the radio.
Yes, yeah. He knows about it, I take it.
Right. Of course, I had to have a girl sing it because it's a girl song. But I didn't write very much pop songs. I was more interested in instrumentals, and I did write a lot of novelty tunes, or funny stuff.
I got tickled just reading a list of the novelty tunes you'd written just because of the titles. I think they were just terrific. They'd get you laughing before you ever heard it.
Yeah, my Them Poems were a big deal there for a while, and they were kind of got me into the music business. The Kingston Trio recorded a couple of those, and that got me started. And just takes one thing to kind of get your name around. And
what are you most proud of looking back on your career thus far?
I would say the chance to work with so many great artists. The thing about a variety show was that whoever came on the show, you spent a week with them, and you sort of got to figure out what their philosophy was or what their creative impetus was, and so you just absorbed all these perspectives. And so I think that was the great thing, was that you got to career-wise, you got to work with all these tremendously talented people, and also the fact that you got to have a career in writing television or recording. And I had books published by Doubleday. That was a big deal. And I think I was a better composer than anything else, so I would say that that's my strong suit. And they always say you want to go with your strengths. So I'm still composing, and I don't perform anymore really, but I still like to write songs, and I played a lot with Byron Berline, who's here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I've seen Byron quite a bit.
Yeah, and we played 150 shows together, and 50 of them were with major symphony orchestras. So all my Oklahoma connections were the beginning, and man, they've lasted just to this day. Yeah. Here we are.
How funny was it, or enjoyable was it, or not, working on comedy team with folks like Carl Reiner and Steve Martin?
Well, I actually hired Steve Martin for the show. I talked Tommy into hiring. Steve and I used to play shows together at the folk clubs in L.A., and he said,
was he playing the banjo then?
Oh yeah, he always played the banjo, and he had his magic act that he did and things. And one day Tommy said, well, I'm going to hire some writers for the show. Is there anybody you know you'd like to hire? And I say, well, there's this one guy named Steve Martin that plays banjo, and he's pretty funny, and I think you should give him a shot. So that's how Steve got his intro into television anyway.
What about Carl Reiner?
Carl Reiner was pretty self-contained. You didn't write for him. He just showed up with his own material, and but at least you got to meet him. And you know, he and Steve became big friends, and Carl was really important in shaping Steve's career as a comedy actor.
Well, early days you were writing for Saturday Night Live, were you not?
That was in 1980, so that was kind of after all that other stuff. Yeah. And I didn't enjoy that as much as I did writing for the Smothers Brothers in L.A. The East Coast perspective was completely different than L.A. And in L.A. they really want to help you, and I got the impression in New York they want you to fail so that it makes them look good. So I said, okay, I'll stay on the West Coast, thank you.
Well, I'm going to ask this to both of you. What took you both to Eugene, Oregon?
Yeah.
Well, my parents were divorced in the 1945 or 46, and my mother married my stepfather and moved to Oregon, and my father, I lived in a little town called Rural, Texas, which was just north of Abilene, about 60 miles. But we came here in 1947 and lived on 14th and Penn, and I went to Hawthorne. That's where I met Ed and Dale Dallas. Remember Dale?
I went to Hawthorne.
Oh, you did?
Well, through the third grade. Then
Well,
I stepped up in the world and became a Gatewood alligator.
Right. Gatewood, that's right. Simon Hughes, who came with me, he was in the third grade at Hawthorne, too.
Well, we were all classmates.
Yeah, that's right.
I forgot that.
Mrs. Lair was my teacher, and she was back then, you know, you had a homeroom teacher, but your homeroom teacher would be the art teacher or the music teacher or the science or the math. So you'd kind of move around from room to room to room. And Mrs. Lair was so important in my career and Ed's career because she focused on art since that was her specialty. And man, every Halloween we made 1,000 Valentines and drew pictures of for Christmas cards and you know, all those holidays were a great chance to create art. And
when did you start playing the guitar?
I started playing the guitar pretty late. I was 19 years old and couldn't read music very well, and I sang well. And what I would do is stand next to somebody in the choir who could sing well, and I'd copy what they were doing. I'd look at the music, but I wasn't really reading it. But when you finally enrolled in music school, you had to read music. And my piano teacher, you had to study different things. I studied piano, I studied bass, I studied flute, I studied the cornet.
Very nice.
Yeah, and I used to be able to the triple tonguing, you know, and I have to practice that before I do it really well.
You've got them laughing in the control room, I can tell you.
We got a minute and a half or so left. The music industry has evolved, and the television industry. From the business perspective, what's your perception of today's
not as good for me, boy. You know, they just pulled the rug out from under people like me, and so I'm Oh, you're always. I would say that where I do well is getting music of mine into films. That pays well, and that's the best idea. Although I get a lot of people recording classical gas and things. Everything that's ever been done eventually comes back around. So
Does anybody record that song that you think, well, that's really, really well done?
Tommy Emmanuel has.
I'm not familiar with.
Boy, he is the world's greatest guitar player. If you ever see him play, you'll just be amazed at the stuff he does.
And so he has the seal of approval to do classical gas whenever he wants.
And he, you gotta, whatever you play and do, you gotta make it your own. And he puts some little touches in it that's uniquely his. And boy, it's really something. But it's been recorded by 300 people at least, and I don't always. These days, it's hard to keep track of all of it because the internet is so all over the place, and so there could be people recording stuff that I don't know anything about.
Hard to keep track of all that.
Man, really, yeah. And I'm not very computer literate. Neither is Ed. We don't do Facebook or Twitter or any of that. But I do have a let's see, what is it? Where you have videos up.
YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah.
I just did that this year. I said, okay, I'll finally come around to that. So.
All right, so people at home can check
They
it out
can check
on
me
YouTube.
out. My YouTube is. I've got about 8 things up. I'm going to put a couple more on soon. So I got a presence.
I've done that, and it's great.
He is Mason Williams, and we appreciate having 2 members of the 1956 class and Northwest class in here on the show today. Mason, it's great. I know Kent's known you a long time, but you and I are just meeting for the first time.
This is great. Okay.
Thank you very much. Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back.
My pleasure.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're wrapping up a show with musician and troubadour Mason Williams.
Oklahoma's troubadour, yeah, and a wonderfully friendly guy that has always been that way for as long as he's been around, and I've known him a long time. Proud to call him my friend, and he's done great things in the music business, in the comedy business, and everything he touches is done with class.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, a person's life is worth the life experiences that they accumulated, and we'll talk about some life experiences that Mason picked up along the way.
Indeed, makes you grin.
Some website information, masonwilliams-online.com, and we have a website, theverdict.tv. Love to see you go there and tell us about a guest you'd like to see on a future show. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. Our thanks to Mason Williams, and thanks to you for watching. We'll be right back.